What I'm wanting to do is walk you through a panel box inspection. And upon approach to this panel box, you can see where there's a shelf or a cabinet built in front of the panel box. That's going to be a reportable item for us because it's an area where storage can occur and possibly block the front of the panel box. One of the first things we want to do before we open up the panel box is we want to check it for safety reasons to see if the panel box cover has any if it's hot or anything like that. What I want to do is use a voltage sniffer, and I want to check each one of the screws and see if potentially if the voltage sniffer picks up any voltage off the screws or off the panel box housing. After I find out that it's safe to open up the cover, one of the first things I want to do is try to find out what the ampacity is for this particular panel box, and you can see here that it's rated for 200 amps. And I'm going to check that against any service disconnects that might be in place, the electrical service meter outside, and then also for the wiring entering the panel box. You can see here where the labeling, the panel box is not labeled very well. From there, I'll scroll down here and you can see that where there's no additional labeling on the interior of the panel box. So that's going to be a reportable item for us to tell our client that there's no labeling or the box is not properly labeled. Here you can see where it's missing a knockout on the upper level and on the lower level. Again, that's going to be another reportable item for us to list to note in our inspection report. And then we're going to look here. You can see where you have the 50 amp breaker setting side by side, another set of 50 amp breakers setting side by side, and 3 sets of 40 amp breakers. If you notice, there's no trip ties in between them. So if you trip off one, they both do not trip off at the same time. So again, another reportable item that we're going to report to in our inspection report for our client. And this particular panel is designed for the upper section to be the power section, and you can see there's 1 set, 2 set, 3 set, 4 set, 5 set. And you would be able to de-energize or turn the power off to this particular panel box by tripping off all 5 of those breakers, but since they do not have trip ties, this is again another violation that does not allow for all the power in the box to be turned off with 6 throws of the hand or with 1 throw of a main disconnect. So from here we're going to take the panel box cover off. Now that we've had safely removed the panel box cover, we want to take a quick look at all the wiring. And we're going to look at the service entrance wires here at the main lugs, and we can see that they're not rated for 200 amps. For that particular gauge, it's going to be rated for anywhere between 125 to 150. So we know the current ampacity for the panel box is not 200, but probably somewhere in the range between 125 and 150. The meter base or outside was rated for 200 as well. Then we're going to just quickly scan the sides of the breakers here. We can see where we do have white wires and black wires going into these, so we do know they're for a 240 volt circuit and that they would need trip ties. We're going to scan on down. We have a series of 15 and 20 amps, and then we want to look at the wire gauge for each one of these. And then over on the other side, we want to take a look at the wiring. We're looking for blistering, any type of overheating, and any type of arcing that may be occurring. We can see here on the neutral and the ground bus bar that we do have aluminum wiring in place. So additional to other things that we're going to be looking for, we're going to be looking for antioxidant gel on the aluminum termination ends. We do have some grounding wires here for that are copper, and then our neutral wires here are aluminum. Now this particular strap right here is called the bonding strap, so we do know the electrical cabinet is bonded back to the ground electrode system. Off to the side we can see where somebody had a knockout. They removed a knockout and ran some wiring through it. The knockout is larger than the wiring that needed to go through it, and the large opening should be sealed and the wire should be clamped securely to the side of the panel box. Also right here we can see where we have a One of the breakers has 2 wires going into it. This breaker in place is not listed and labeled for this type of wiring. So we're going to list double tapping at this particular panel box. In some jurisdictions, bundling of the wires are not allowed, but we cannot see behind the sheetrock or the gypsum board, so we don't know if the wiring was separated within the wall cavity. Knowing construction science and older homes, typically we find that they were not separated, so the bundling is an improper wiring method under today's standards as well. Again, double lugging of the neutral wires is no longer an acceptable practice. Now, when the home was built, it was allowed. So here's a panel box inspection. The defects that we found were aluminum wiring with no antioxidant gel on them, double tapping of the neutral bar, wires passing through the panel box housing that were not properly secured, no main disconnect, trip ties were missing, the box was not properly labeled, knockouts on the cover plate were missing, and then again, I think I mentioned no main disconnect. So here's a panel box inspection for you through the eyes of the inspector.